Pagans are often talking about doing honourable deeds to be remembered and live on in the future, about legacy and building a heritage to pass on to future generations. Yet, financially, many are living in an extremely vulnerable position, in a way that cannot survive hardship, let alone generations. So let's change that. This is a very hands-on course in financial literacy for pagans to rebuild financial strength that can survive inflation, hardship, and generations. Welcome to Haminga. One might think that us in the Western world are rich, but the thing is that 50% of, for example, Swedes, they can't even afford an unexpected expense of $1,000. They simply don't have any buffet. Take a look around you and one thing becomes hard to ignore. Some cultures are consistently better at building, growing and keeping wealth over generations. Not necessarily because they are more intelligent or work harder, but because they pass on financial knowledge, habits and structures, and that's something us pagans seem to have forgotten about. Many of us didn't inherit that. Instead, we inherited very little in the way of assets, and very few tools for protecting or growing what we earn. The result is a fragile situation. Lots of effort, but little ownership. Constant work, but very thin margins. And that fragility isn't just personal, it's cultural. When assets are scarce, every setback becomes a crisis, and nothing solid gets passed on. And what makes this even worse is that there are very few financial literacy resources that actually speak to us. This series exists because that gap matters. It's about giving us the practical financial tools we were never handed, at least lately. Tools for stability, ownership, and continuity. Build for where we actually are and for the kind of future we want to leave behind. One thing is for sure, this is not a theoretical course. There will be no long historical background, no abstract philosophy, no financial jargon that doesn't translate into action. Pecuniary is a no-nonsense, hands-on course. Every episode is built around practical steps you can take immediately. Steps that directly affect your own finances. We'll focus on tangible things, where money leaks, how it actually moves, how to protect it, and how to turn it into something that lasts. So, about building real financial strength, one concrete step at a time. We'll soon get going, but before you open your notebook, I just want to say that the course title, Pecuniary, isn't as unsexy as you might think. In fact, it's really witty and very much related to our Indo-European pagan field. To our ancestors, cattle was real wealth. They were food, warmth, tools, status, security. They reproduced, they survived winter, they could be passed on. In other words, wealth once meant something real that could sustain a family and outlive a single lifetime. Somewhere along the way, many of us lost that connection. And what's interesting here is that pecuniary, nowadays meaning all things economy related, has its root in the ancient Proto-Indo-European word peku, actually meaning both cattle and wealth at the same time. Just like the Latin word pecu and the Germanic and Norse rune feu, or fair in modern Swedish. They too have the same root and meaning. So pecuniary is a great name for a financial literacy course for pagans. Now, today a lot of us work hard and still live in a very fragile situation. One illness, one missed paycheck, one crisis, and everything can fall apart. We're busy, we're exhausted, and despite our effort, we are often not building anything that lasts. As a group, we've been very bad at building generational wealth. Not because we're incapable, but because the systems we live in were not designed for us to own, preserve, or pass on wealth. Inflation quietly eats what little we manage to save. Debt pulls future income into the present. And most of us were never taught how to protect ourselves from that. And the result is not just financial press and stress, it's an unhealthy way of living. Constant pressure, constant insecurity, constant dependence. And that brings us to an uncomfortable question. What are we actually passing on to the next generation? If we want to leave behind more than stress, debt and vulnerability, if we want to pass on stability, options and real freedom, then something has to change, something has to be done. We need to relearn the old idea of wealth, ownership, resilience and continuity across generations. So let's do it. The very first step is awareness. Trying to build wealth without knowing where you stand is like building a house without checking the ground beneath it. If there's a sinkhole under your foundation, no amount of effort on the walls or on the roof will save it. And you can't pass on what you never built. So before we build, before we fix, before we plan, we need to understand where we stand right now. So in this first episode, we're going to do 3 very clear and tangible things to take an honest and sober look at where we're at right now. Let's dig where we stand. The first exercise is to take a look at 2 types of money and income. Already here, a lot of people have gone wrong and are trapped financially. Most people live off earned money. That means money we only get if we show up and work. It's tied to your body and your time, like a job, a wage, etc. Like if you went to the neighboring village out on the steppe and took care of their cows and horses, and in return they gave you a little food or some things to barter. Owned income is tied to assets. So money that keeps coming in because we own something, not because we worked another hour. Like the lucky bastards over at the neighboring village. Their cattle produces food, more cattle, clothes, milk, warmth, etc. And you're helping them in that process. Earned incomes are stuff like a job, wages, salaries, tips, disability benefits, etc. You trade your time for money. Owned income can be, for example, owning a business, a rental property, dividends from investments, intellectual property, etc. If earned income stops, the money stops. If you don't have a job or simply stop going there because you're sick and tired of it, there's not going to be any paycheck. When you're tired, you're sick, injured or old, then earned income slows down or disappears completely. Assets don't get tired. they don't call in sick, they don't age, at least not in the same sense and to the same degree as you and I do. That's why wealthy people focus less on working more hours and more on owning things that pay them. You can of course always work more and work harder and perhaps get a raise, but only trading time for money is quite ineffective. So why does this matter for you? Well, when all your money is earned, your life is very fragile. One bad event can cut off everything. The neighbors might move, your job might cease to exist. But when some of your money is owned, or your assets, your life becomes more stable. It gives you breathing room. I'm going to go much deeper into this in a future episode when we talk about the cash flow quadrant, the income quadrant. But for now, I want you to pause the video and write down all the income or money sources you have, all of them. Then mark which ones stop flowing in if you stop working. Okay, have you written them all down and marked the earned income sources? I'm quite sure that if you're watching this video, you can already see that you're in a fragile situation. And then if we also add to that it's close to mathematically impossible to get rich through paid work or employment, then you realize that you're already also trapped. Keep this document as a working document. We're going to use it a lot. The next exercise is level of financial security and stability. Before we even say a single word about saving, investing, or building a better future, we need to slow down for a moment and get honest about something very important. We have to understand where we are standing right now. Not how hard you work, not how smart you are, but how safe you are financially. We're not going to ask how much money do I have. A better question is, how financially secure am I? Now look at your life situation and finances as a ladder with 9 steps that goes from constant danger to real safety. Every step on that ladder changes how much stress, fear and control you have over your life. Let's have a look at that ladder. I'll go through the 9 steps and then I want you to pause and write down what level of financial security you're at in life. So the first step on the ladder, the first step if we're not living in deep poverty, below existential minimum or in a very acute situation. Then it is the precarity level. Here, survival depends severely on a continuous income and or outside help, support systems, allowances, benefits, etc. Some don't even have a job. Or if you miss one paycheck or it doesn't arrive on time, then you perhaps can't pay the rent or buy food without help. You have no savings, no margin for error. A lot of people are in debt. If one thing goes wrong, an illness, a broken phone, a missed shift, everything can start to fall apart. Some people will have to accept abusive jobs, take predatory loans, sell future time cheaply, or stay in unsafe housing or relationships. The first real financial victory is not saving or investing. It is escaping precarity. The next step is called financial fragility. This one's a bit better. You're living paycheck to paycheck. You might be in debt, but your salary most often covers your costs. And maybe you can pay most of your bills, etc. But one small shock, one surprise expense like a car repair, medical bill, a late paycheck, that causes crisis, and maybe you'll have to choose what bill to pay. One small thing forces you deeper into crisis. Step 3 is called financial solvency. You still live paycheck to paycheck, but you break even. You can pay your bills. Perhaps you have assets that can be sold to help you meet your financial obligations should something happen. Your assets cover the costs. Your debts and liabilities aren't much bigger than what you can actually manage on a long-term basis. So as the name indicates, you can solve things. You have solvency. But you don't really have any buffers or other savings and investments. Step 4 is financial stability, a quite secure personal finance situation. You're still dependent on your salary, but you have everything in up to step 3. That's to say you have solvency, plus you can absorb shocks without borrowing or a major crisis. So solvency plus a buffer of at least 3 net monthly salaries, meaning that if you had no income at all for 3 months, you could still cover your and your household's normal expenses during these 3 months. Step 5 is called freedom from debt. You have step 1, 2 and 3 plus and 4 of course, a plus that you don't have any bad or big debts at all. Step 6 is financial security. You have everything up to step 5 plus that you have investments, dividends or returns that cover the lion's share of the monthly expenses. So basically that your assets generate all of your living costs every month. Step 7 is called financial independence. You have everything up to step 6 plus that your returns, dividends, etc. cover a very high life standard. Let's say that your passive income is at least as big as your net income every month. Step 8 is financial freedom. Your passive incomes cover your life standard plus new expenses that you didn't have before, things you couldn't afford before. You can easily afford to buy things that used to give you a stomachache just to think about. A new, very expensive car, for example. The last step here is financial abundance. You have so much that you don't even spend the returns of your assets, probably more than $10 million. So now pause the video and write down on the same document what step of the financial security ladder you stand on right now. Okay, are you ready? So the last exercise is a challenge I'm going to give you. Let's call it cash flow awareness. Before we even think of starting a budget, we need to know what our months look like, where our money actually goes. We do this to stop money from bleeding before trying to grow it. So for 1 month, either if you do it for the last full month that has already passed or for the coming month, I want you to track every single income and expense like a scientist. I prefer if you do it for a month that's already passed, because then you can't influence it or be good for that month, etc. But for 30 days, check every single expense and every income, no matter how big or small. Use raw reality, not categories. So don't start with like food, rent, entertainment, etc. Start with where every dollar went, how often, how much, when, etc. When you've done that, we sort past spending into survival, stability, freedom, fun, and leaks. This answers things like what is helping me and what is hurting me. The last step here is to find the pressure points. We ask, what is the biggest leak? What is the most painful bill? What is the most emotional spending, etc.? This shows where small changes give big relief. For this, I'm going to give you, the last step, I'm going to give you an example that will make things much easier. Let's take Bernie as an example. Bernie is 34, works full-time in a warehouse, and he lives paycheck to paycheck. He feels constantly broke, but doesn't know how or why. He decides to do the cash flow awareness month. And we'll walk through all the 5 steps using Bernie's real fictive numbers. Okay, so here we have Bernie. He's sitting here taking a look at some receipts, confused that he's got so little left of his money. But he takes on the cash flow awareness challenge to see what really happens every month. He's written down everything and then takes a thorough look at where his money went this past month. At the warehouse, he makes $2,400 after tax per month, paid bi-weekly $1,200. And he's tracked everything that went out this month, what it was and when it happened. He paid the rent and paid the electric bill. He has a Netflix and Spotify account. He got a parking ticket. He's been eating out quite a few times. He has a car, so he's had to fill that one up a couple of times. He spent $100 on cigarettes, which is not unusual at all when you're smoking. And so on and so on and so on. You see the expenses here. In total, he spent $2,332 this month, meaning that he has $68 left at the end of the month. He still feels broke, he still has no buffer, but now he can at least see why. So now Bernie takes the next step. He sorts and labels all expenses into a money map. In the category survival go the rent, $950, utilities, $110, the phone, $85, that's quite expensive, gas, $127, groceries, $305. So the survival total is $1,577. Next comes stability, meaning future safety. And there he's only got the payday loan payments for $360. So that's a total of $360. And then we have fun, the fun category. Netflix, $32. Spotify, $11. I think they actually raised the prices. He has drinks with friends, $38. He bought a birthday gift for $30. So a fun total of $111. And then we come to leaks, where we have fast food, snacks and coffee, $109. Cigarettes, $100. He took an Uber for $50 or several times. He has bank fees, $70. Late fees and tickets, $70. He bought something impulsive on Amazon, $64. He bought energy drinks for $6. So the leaks total $469. Bernie is shocked. I lost almost $500 and didn't even enjoy it, he says. He takes a look at the pressure points and identifies the biggest leak, which was food on the go for $109. The most painful was the payday loan, $360. The dumbest loss was the bank fees, $70. Well, it can be discussed here if it wasn't rather the cigarettes, but anyway. He realizes, I'm not that poor, I'm just bleeding. So from here, he can decide to cancel Spotify and save $11 a month. He can cook 3 more meals per week and save $60. He can avoid overdrafts, save $35. He can skip 1 Uber a week and save $40. Doing those things would free $146 a month. And saving $146 a month would be something like $2,400 in 10 years. But we'll come to that in another episode. The most important in this episode is that we see what's going on. We know where we stand. This was the first episode and the first 3 exercises of Pecuniary, a course in pagan financial literacy. I'll see you in the next one.